At this time, I think, unless we have any other things that we'd like to say from the panel, be happy to open it up for questions from the audience. Yes?
It's probably for maybe Father Ferguson, but I've heard a lot in the news in the past year or so about making the annulment process faster and easier. Now, I have received a declaration of nullity from a prior marriage, and that actually doesn't sit well for me. I'm not sure it should be a quick and easy process, and I think when you're looking for the truth as to the state of your marriage, that's what you need, not a rubber stamp of what you want, but what is the facts. And you mentioned like a doctor. I wouldn't want a doctor taking out some organ thinking, oh, well, it might have cancer. You want to be sure. So what does that mean when they're talking about making it quicker and easier? Is that shortcuts, or, you know, which part would then be removed, or is that just all theoretical at this point?
At this point, it is pretty theoretical. I think that it's important to realize that the process itself has evolved over many centuries. And like any juridical process, I think it's constantly in need of attention and tweaking. We're never going to get to a situation where we've got the ideal process and we don't need to make any changes. Among the things that have been examined as far as being changed, and again, this is all still on the theory level, is the role of the second instance tribunal. There's been a call from some quarters to say if in the first instance, in the court of first instance, if there were 3 judges and a defender of the bond that all look at this case and have all said, yeah, this marriage is null, or there's no reasonable presumption of validity left here, that we might not need to send those cases to the court of second instance for ratification. That would shave off some time on some cases. I think that's worth looking into. I still think that there is value to having that court of second instance, because even though I think the vast majority of tribunals are doing an excellent job of investigation, it's always best to have 2 different sets of eyes looking at cases. But again, it's on a theoretical level, and I think that there is room for looking at how we do cases, what are the good things that we're trying to hold in balance, and what is the thing that we're trying to accomplish. And I don't think that the thing that we're trying to accomplish is annulment. I think that the thing that we're trying to accomplish is holding the value of marriage that we hold, and protecting people's rights as life goes forward. So I hope that's a...
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes?
There seems to be a misconception with some people that if they go for an annulment, that makes their children illegitimate. Could you address that?
Did you catch that? That was, if you go through the annulity process, that the children of that marriage would be considered illegitimate.
A couple things, and that is a very common conception out there. First of all, that isn't true, and that never has been true. It's not. Some people will say, well, the church has changed on that. No, the church, the way that the church has stated the matter is that children that are born to a putatively valid marriage are legitimate and retain that status. The second thing I think that needs to be said with that is just looking at the whole issue of legitimacy and illegitimacy. Really, that's a civil law concept. Legitimacy has to do with who inherits the title, who inherits the property, those sorts of issues. It's not really something that the church has an interest in. I think it's unfortunate that for many years the church has used that civil language of legitimacy and illegitimacy, because it is something that I don't think that fits naturally in with our understanding of life, or our understanding of the dignity of person. I'm legitimate because I'm a human person, not because my parents happened to be married when I was born. The Code of Canon Law from 1983, which is the code that we're operating under now, has retained a couple uses of that legitimate, illegitimate language, mostly because there are places in the world, Malta, for example, where the Code of Canon Law is also a civil law. But there are no longer any penalties attached to illegitimacy. It used to be if a man was illegitimate, he could not be ordained to the priesthood without a dispensation from Rome. That's completely gone now, thank God. That's a thing of the past. And I will tell people, I mean, I have, at last count, 15 nieces and 4 nephews. Some of them were born with the benefit of marriage, some of them were born without the benefit of marriage. I don't see any difference in any of them. And if people want to categorize people into categories of legitimate and illegitimate, I think really that's their issue.
We could say, the church has a strong desire to uphold the dignity of the person, the human person. So why we're concerned about marriage too is what's the institution that best allows new citizens to come forth, and what's the best environment for children to be raised who can become good citizens of the country. So the only reason, in a certain way, that the state has an investment or has had an investment in marriage is how it relates to building the culture, right? And so this little book poses, the benefit of children is largely at stake in how we define marriage. And so even without religious language, if you say and recognize marriage being what unites a man and a woman and any children born to the union, if you remove that, what do you have then for building the culture is the question.
How do we better form couples now who are entering into the sacrament of marriage? What do we need to do as a church and as a society, as a family, to teach our children and to teach these young couples who are looking at marriage, and to make sure that they're fully informed of what it's all about, and how does the church do that? How do we do that from a family standpoint?
That's a great question, and very much of interest for all of us in the church. And listening to Faye, when you're mentioning, homeschooling and the desire to pass on the faith, and that's a beautiful, essential thing. The church will say that the remote preparation for marriage is the family. The family is the remote preparation. That's where you begin forming a person that's able to make that kind of commitment and enter into that with knowledge and with freedom and have maturity. But knowing the state of the family, of course, or some crippling factors in the whole culture that are of concern. But we try the best with beyond the family, who are the primary catechists of the faith, what we can do to support them and strengthen them with good teaching for our youth, starting in childhood and on, to understand the Lord especially, because what we really need is marriage in the Lord. Okay? Marriage in the Lord, as St. Paul would say, where He's at the center. He's the healer of hearts. He's the one that can really help people offer themselves as a sincere gift. But if the teaching, if it's received, we see the range of young people that are saying yes to the Lord and growing deeper in their faith. There's some that might resist for a while, and they're more vulnerable then to approach marriage. But I'll let each one on the panel here say a few words.
I think that's an excellent, very timely question. It's sort of axiomatic to say that if marriage preparation begins when the couple knocks on the rectory door and says, "Father, we want to get married," it's already too late. Marriage preparation really needs to begin in childhood and young adulthood. I love what you said, Faye, when you're talking about your children and helping them to see that in dating, in looking for a partner, looking for a spouse, it's very important at the beginning of that relationship to make sure that the person that you're dating is somebody that you might eventually marry. I think that there's all sorts of wonderful things about high school kids, college kids going out in groups, going out and having fun and getting to know each other and getting to know people of the opposite sex and everything. But a real dating relationship really has to have that potentiality for marriage in mind. And if this person is not gonna be a good wife, is not gonna be a good husband, we need to help those kids back away from those relationships and discover their own self-worth and the worth of the person that they're going to be dating. A lot of marriages that I see, the problem that inhibited the validity of the marriage really starts with an issue of low self-esteem, of that type of issue that they fall for the first person that shows them any attention. If we teach our children their real dignity, their real worth as persons, and allow them to say, you deserve to marry someone who is just as good as you. And there are people out there that will treat you well and will respect you. Then I think we'll have much more stable and solid marriages going forward.
Right, was it Pope St. John Paul who said, families become what you are? Families become what you are. Families are so important. When you think about your own upbringing and how you may be raising children yourself, how many of you think back to, well, how did mom do this? Or how did dad do this? Or what was it like in our home when I was growing up? So you can see the importance of a family, a healthy family life in then perpetuating that health with your children and the choices that they make. So my late husband and I chose to homeschool our children. It was a very good venue for being able to be around our children a lot. They picked up a lot of our values, not by us preaching, but just because they lived with us and they spent a lot of time with us. I know all of you can't homeschool, everybody can't homeschool, but the time that you spend with your children and the parents themselves, if they're not formed correctly, then you can't give what you don't have. Hopefully, they'll come to the realization that they don't have it and will seek out information and formation and help from others, from the church, from pastors, from friends who can help them learn what is it like to think about something called courtship, which is kind of what Father Tim was talking about. What does that mean? And would that be right for our family to talk about that? So I think there's a big responsibility on parents' shoulders to find out information, educate themselves, take back the power and authority that they have as parents. Don't give it all to the schools. Don't give it all to the culture, the community. Give some to the parish, of course. But parents need to, I think, the family needs to become what they are.
Well, I agree that as Father Larry affirmed a while ago, is that we have this universal call to holiness, and we have to live that out, to model it to our children, and then as they go forward into their teen years and start thinking about marriage for themselves, then this will be the basis for how they enter into marriage and the person that they choose.
One last thing that I want to say on the topic too is I think the support that we as individuals and as a community can give to people that are struggling in their marriage, and every marriage goes through rough spots. I think that it's very dangerous for us, sort of separating us by gender for a minute, when a male friend comes to me and says, Tim, I'm really having some problems with my marriage. My response shouldn't be, well, come on, let's go out drinking, let's talk about what an evil woman you're married to, and let's trash your wife and call her all sorts of names, and the same thing with women. When a woman friend calls you up and says, I'm having real problems in my relationship, the response shouldn't be, well, let's sit around and talk about what an evil SOB he is and blah, 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 blah. No, we need to help people that are struggling in their marriage recommit to that marriage if at all possible, and re-examine Maybe even ask the question, well, okay, I know you're going through a rough patch right now, but what was it that made you fall in love with this person in the first place? What was it that attracted you to that person? I think there are a lot of marriages that hit rough spots and fall apart when really they could have been saved if they had stronger support from family and friends. And I think that we need to do a better job, again, both as individuals but also as a church community, in supporting those that are going through rough spots in their marriage.
And just again to emphasize, I would say part of the preparation is the evangelization part, helping people come to know the Lord and know His healing love, know His guidance, know the Holy Spirit's power, and to understand again, as Father Tim was saying, the value of the person. And I had the pleasure, and the word you used, Faye, of courtship, just in the last couple of years, a beautiful young couple that's going to be married this summer, who were meeting with me, and they purposely were adopting that understanding. We're courting each other, not just dating, and means of everything is aimed with an eye to, is the Lord calling us to marriage, and how's the best way that we can get to know each other and discern, are we called to marriage? And their great maturity, great growing holiness in their lives is wonderful to see. What built them was their family background, their faith development, and then, of course, one of the safeguards in a way to be free to pursue marriage better, chastity, that difficult virtue, but then it frees us more to be able to make a gift of ourselves rather than be on the take in a way. And of course, those of us in marriage preparation often find a third to half of the couples coming to us are already sexually involved, maybe living together. So it's a case of evangelizing, healing, helping them restart perhaps, or make some steps to get in the Lord's order. So those are part of the factors involved in evangelization, family background, seeing what is courtship indeed, and the freedom of chastity to bring healing to hearts. And anything that helps with that is really making a difference. A little advertisement for something we're going to offer here in the fall, in September, a beautiful program that's just new called Beloved, which is about a 10 or 12 session series on marriage put out by the Augustine Institute. And wonderful presentations from couples and teachers about, again, this vision of marriage and the beauty of it and the challenges. And we're going to offer it for engaged couples as well as married couples who can be enriched and just, again, see the beauty of marriage. So really invite you to be on Wednesday nights here starting in September.